I want to welcome you to the American Shoulder and Elbow Surgeons podcast. I'm your host, Brian Waterman, a sports and shoulder surgeon at Wake Forest in North Carolina. Before we get started, I should mention that the views expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the American Shoulder and Elbow Surgeon Society, the University of Utah, Wake Forest University, or any institutions of our guests. So today we have an episode of the American Shoulder and Elbow Surgeons Leadership Development Program. This is the American Shoulder and Elbow Surgeons annual program dedicated to enhancing the careers of young surgeons. Both Peter and myself were lucky to be part of the first class, and so we're very excited to have the leaders of this program on the podcast to discuss. First, from Duke University, we have Dr. Christopher Klifto. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me, Brian. Pleasure to be here.
A repeat customer.
I don't know who I pissed off, but it's good to be back.
So next from Stanford University in California, we have Dr. Emilie Cheung. Emilie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for having us.
All right. Finally, from Detroit, Michigan, we have Dr. Jason Holcomb. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brian. This is a great opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, Emilie. So I want to start with you. I know you were incredibly instrumental in starting the LDP. I was wondering if you might just walk us through what inspired you to develop this program. Where did you see the need?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. That's a really good question, and a question a lot of people asked me. And so I think a few years ago, when Mark Frankel invited us to start this committee or task force, Jason and I were brainstorming on ways that we could help, and what, from a membership standpoint, do we think we can do to help engage the younger members and get the younger people of the organization talking more to the leadership of the organization.
Yeah, and it seems like grassroots efforts to start to engage younger members and get a feel for what their individual needs are. It starts with the purpose. How did you ultimately end up organizing this effort?
Well, when we first started the task force on membership experience, we kind of divided the task force into all the different committees of ASES. And I noticed that one of the committees is that they all kind of have in common is leadership development, or the possibility of interacting with the leadership of the organization from the younger members' standpoint.
Yeah, and one of the critical features, I think, of the ASES is just really such a strong history of leadership, and offering young members and individuals that are early in this organization access to those leaders has been such an important feature that I've seen in my brief time and involvement. I know that you involved a management consulting firm. Can you tell us about that and how that relationship unfolded?
Sure. So a little bit more about the background is I noticed that the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, as well as the AOSSM, and I think I heard that the Hand Society was also doing it. They were starting to have leadership development programs kind of aimed at the younger membership and trying to engage them. And so I thought, well, the Shoulder and Elbow Society should have the same or similar type of thing. And it turns out that hosting these types of sessions and hosting this type of a program within your organization is it can be accomplished with different consulting firms that actually exist for this very purpose in different areas of business, for example. So we narrowed it down to 3 different consulting firms, and it just so happened that J3P has had some experience, personal relationships with some of the ex-presidents of the Shoulder and Elbow Society. So they were already very familiar with our organization. And then when we did the budgeting and looked at their different types of offerings, we ended up choosing J3P.
Yeah, and I agree. It seems like they definitely have a palpable relationship with several of the key leaders remind me those individuals. Dr. Zuckerman was among those that I remember. Who are the others?
I remember J3P had JP Warner actually on somehow there's a relationship between him and some of the members who were starting this management firm as well. So I think they had different friends.
And definitely relationships. So it seems like with Fortune 500 companies and military leadership. So it seems to be a really interesting group that has a well-established pathway for leadership. Jason, how did you initially become involved?
Thank you. I was going to backtrack a little bit and just make sure Emilie gets credit. So when Dr. Frankel approached Emilie and I about starting this membership experience task force, there was a goal in mind, which was to improve the experience of the membership of the ASES, but there wasn't really a strategy. And Dr. Frankel trusted us with forming a strategy. And Emilie really organized that in a way that I didn't have the vision for. So Emilie organized a strategy towards achieving our goal. And through that, this evolution of the LDP came. That was purely her idea. She partnered with J3P and got that off the ground. So I would just emphasize that she was a big component of getting the LDP going. So my role in the task force has been it's a committee now, but Emilie and I have been co-chairs for now 4 years, and we've worked with this committee to try to find opportunities within the ASCS to bridge the gaps between committees and to improve membership experience. And for me, the LDP has been kind of the one of the shining examples of how we can do that through our society. Has been a big investment from the ASCS. They've invested a significant amount of money to help young and mid-career members go through the LDP and benefit from that.
Yeah, I certainly want to credit you both for just having such a fundamental role in this and seeing the need there. I think having advocates like yourselves, especially in the senior levels, have been very instrumental for members like Chris and I, who both were involved with the inaugural class. Chris, I want to bring you in at this point in time. I know you were along there with me in the first class. Can you just tell me a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I owe a lot to the LDP program. And I think the thing that I would say I took away from the most and the biggest benefit I had, aside from like the leadership stuff and learning more about yourself and who we are, which I guess we'll talk about a little bit later, but the relationships that I built in that program, I didn't realize it at the time, but they're my closest friends in ASCS right now. And between you, Peter, and all the countless other people, I can't remember how many people were in our first group, but those are the people that I always call first when I'm at any meeting just to catch up with. And we did our meeting, or our group rather, during COVID, and even with that that lack of personal interconnectivity because of COVID, like I still felt like we all really, really bonded and we still all keep in touch, which was a huge benefit of the program.
Yeah, Chris, and to stick with that, what would you say were the most valuable lessons that you gleaned from your involvement in the LDP?
The personality assessment, I thought taking a deep dive into who we were as a group and then also who I was as an individual was kind of eye-opening, right? Like you have you perceive who you are, you think who you are, and then until you take a test and it tells you who you are, and I guess they're imperfect, obviously, and then you have your peers rate you. I mean, that was I would love to know what you thought about that, but getting a 360 evaluation, taking your own personality test, and then be able to compare that with the rest of the group was a really cool exercise.
Yeah, it certainly throws you into the light of vulnerability. And when you start to solicit feedback from those around you, especially when it's unattached to a given individual and it's anonymous, I found both completely frightening and at the same point in time, very instrumental for my professional growth. I kind of be interested in pulling in Emilie at this point in time. You were also there alongside with us. What were your thoughts and take home messages from the LD?
Sure. I think one of the unique things that this program does is it has basically a one-on-one assessment. So you get to debrief with your personality assessments. Kind of like later on, you get a 360-degree review based on feedback of colleagues that you solicit. And so I think that was really useful to have somebody sit down and kind of analyze the data with you and tell you, you talk about what that means to you and ways in which, at the end, when you kind of understand it better, kind of think in ways in which you can improve on maybe your communication skills or the way that you're interacting with others, and look at it at an angle that you didn't ever think about before. It's completely different perspective.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, Emilie, like I thought one of the most interesting things about those debriefs were they would take your data, for instance, for the Hogan personality test, and then they would tell you what makes you ineffective as a leader. And that was like highly valuable, right? Like for me, whenever I'm stressed, I get quiet and almost analytical. And, we debriefed on that and almost micromanaging. And that's a big turnoff for people. So it was really good to see that assessment to kind of understand that and then actually see me doing the mistakes that they called me out on, which I like really didn't perceive until I actually went through this exercise. Have I been able to change that in my day to day? I don't know. Probably not, honestly. I try my best, but that's a whole separate issue. But just understanding it at least makes you aware when you're in those situations, which was really interesting.
I think you're right, Chris. I don't know that the goal of the Hogan personality test is to change your behaviors, but more to understand them. I think maybe you can find opportunities to better yourself, but at least I agree with you that more than anything, it helped me just understand my personality and how I tend to react to stresses and things. And it also helps me understand people around me. So I think a little bit of psychology helps me to understand, okay, this person is behaving this way because of this, and I can react in an appropriate way. So that I think most of us had the same experience, that the personality assessment, the Hogan test, was very eye opening to see our personality sort of put into words and put into charts. We all sat in the group and we knew that everyone was different in the group. Everyone had different personalities, but that just helped to quantify things in a way that just became much more enlightening.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of along that same point, which I wasn't expecting was, when you get these assessments, or when you think about when you're trying to analyze yourself, sometimes how can I do better in this situation? It's kind of like a good example would be, well, I realized, okay, based on that assessment, you tend to get quiet when you're stressed, right? That's what Chris said. And I was kind of like thinking, yeah, so when I'm tired or stressed, I actually don't communicate well. I'm very much of an internal processor, an internal thinker. So I don't always say what's on my mind, even though my mind is, maybe thinking a lot of different things. But that's kind of making you think about, okay, you need to be more of an external thinker. You need to share more, articulate what is on your mind better so that people understand you better in this situation. You don't realize you're coming across in a different way.
What I like that all of you have mentioned is this development of soft skills and being able to share some of areas for improvement and as well our strengths. The nice part about the LDP is it brought together a lot of individuals from variable different backgrounds. We all assume that there are common factors for success, and I'm sure there are some, but there were also areas where we were uniquely different and can learn from each other. I'm curious, Chris, how have you changed your leadership style in response to this?
I think it's just understanding myself better. And, for me, one of the great benefits of when I did the course was I think I was 2 or 3 years into practice at the time. Um, and, now I think I'm starting my seventh or eighth year, whatever it is. But, you change a lot as the years go on, hopefully in a good way. And this program helped me understand, like, me being the big idiot I was back then, and how maybe I interacted poorly in the OR when things were going not how I wanted them to. I think this program gave me the skills that to at least try and do it better, if that makes sense. And I have not been fired yet by my institution, so I credit a lot to the skills I learned from this program.
And I was wondering briefly if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your editorial that you were able to generate with the help of all of our collaborators, and it was published recently in the Journal Shoulder Elbow Surgeons.
Yeah, I just, I wanted to write this just because, one, I felt, you know, just so much gratitude to have been part of this program. And I know the time investment that Emily and Jason put into it. And then there's also the investment that everyone in the group did to participate. I can't even tell you how many meetings, right? It wasn't like onerous. It was fun, but we had in-person meetings. We went to San Diego together. We met at the ASES meeting in Tampa for those that could make it. And I just really enjoyed the experience and the bond that was created from not only the leadership perspective, but also our peers in it. And that was like another thing that I thought was just awesome about the whole process was the leadership investment. I mean, we had a whole session where the past presidents just gave us pearls of wisdom. And like, I'll never forget it. Bill Levine talked about the book Essentialism, where you have to learn to say no to people. And like, Brian, you're a little bit older than me, a little bit more senior than me, but you're probably in the same point of your career where you're like, shoot, I have to stop saying yes because I'm probably ineffective because I'm saying yes to everything. I'm not doing anything right. So just hearing like little pearls from that really made me want to write a little editorial about my gratitude for it. But also, there was a lot of really cool stuff that we learned, not only about ourselves, but, from ASES as a whole, because they would essentially like the cohort of 30 plus people who were part of this program essentially represented different points in time of all the participants, right? We had some people who were 1 or 2 years out into practice like I was, and then we had some people who were at the end of their careers. And it was just really cool to learn about the different personality traits of all of the members. And that's why I wanted to write that article.
Yeah, that was great, Chris. That was great of you to write that article and bring attention to the program, and also just the society as a whole. Kind of gets people more involved, and that's what gets people to stay active in the society. I wish I had attended something like this earlier on in my career.
I think within such a nuclear community of shoulder and elbow surgeons, it's nice to build community and connectedness, and this is just another way in which you can do that among the young members. Emilie, who would you see as being the ideal candidate for this type of program?
Yeah, well, obviously, the younger people, the candidate members, the newer graduates, that's kind of the first thing that we think of when we think about the people we want to involve. But it doesn't have to be that way. Actually, we heard that the last year's cohort was great because they had a couple senior leaders. I think it was David Weinstein and Kevin Plancher, right? Yeah. And I think I heard that having them on as senior leaders within the cohort was great because they sparked a lot of interesting conversations based on their previous experience, and also just adding diversity to the conversation makes it more interesting.
Yeah, so you talked a lot about the folks that can and probably should be involved, and I agree. The geographic diversity, difference by practice setting, also unique areas of focus. I think were very instrumental in bringing some diversity of thought to the group. Maybe Jason, if I can go to you next, what do you see as the future of this program?
That's a great question. So, the ASES membership has expanded in the past decade. And so, as a result, what we've recognized in our membership experience committee is that some people are on the fringes or they feel a bit left out. And I have to admit, I was in a situation like that when Dr. Frankel asked Emilie and I to co-chair the membership experience task force. I think the leadership development program is an opportunity for people who feel that they're on the fringes to get involved in the ASES. And that's where some of the younger people would may be interested in applying. Even mid-career and late career people are encouraged to apply. So, like Emilie said, last year's group was somewhat diverse in age, and that really helped to improve the quality of the discussions and improve the quality of the program itself. But I think the leadership development program is going to continue on in a way that will help to encourage young people to get involved with the society. Some people just need a bit of encouragement or a bit of a push, and that's what the LDP will help to provide them. That's one of the biggest things I would emphasize. So, not just learning about yourself and learning about other people's personalities, but also understanding that the ASCS is investing in you, and that investment in you can help to give you the confidence to then become a leader with the ASCS. That's an aspect of the program that at least I recognized early on, is that ASCS is investing quite a bit of money in this program, and ultimately they're investing in me, and so that encourages me to then become more of a leader in the society, and to try to make the ASCS proud of their investment.
Can I ask you, Emilie and Jason, a quick question? This is, and we, obviously, Brian and I weren't part of the second cohort, but the first cohort, the Hogan personality test, had some cool findings. And, the hiring scoring categories for us as a cohort, as a group, were our learning approach, our inquisitive nature, and our overall prudence. And some of the low scores we had on the personality test were our adjustment, right? We don't adjust well in times of stress, our interpersonal sensitivity, and our big derailer was micromanagement. Can you guys comment on, since you're heading this leadership, what do you think that means for your own practice, and what do you think that means for ASES as a whole?
Yeah, so I think getting feedback like that's very important, and that makes us kind of put ourselves under the microscope and say, is there something in my life that I'm not doing well, and that I'm not aware of it, right? So it makes you think about, okay, let's try and go back into your challenging things in life, challenging situations that you can find yourself in, and think about, okay, maybe I could have done that better, or take a step back and handled the situation in a different way that you communicated, for example, what you said, or and just kind of look at it from a different perspective. I like that.
Hey, Chris, so I think that these personality tests are interesting. Subconsciously we recognize that everyone has different personalities, and I think when we build a team or build a committee, we might subconsciously think about having some diversity in the committee. One thought that I keep having is that these personality tests it gives us some quantitative measures on how people react and um, uh, what their opportunities might be and what their strong points might be. And so building a committee may come down to some sort of a mathematical equation where people have different strengths and opportunities, and you sort of build a committee with some diversity. I keep thinking about that, thinking that we subconsciously build a team in that way, but having some quantitative numbers, if everyone in the society were to take the personality test, that might be interesting.
Yeah, I think you all have touched on some really significant highlights that we draw from this program. And I think what's also reflected in our comments is just an intense sense of gratitude to the ASES for the opportunity. I found it an incredible learning opportunity. I would encourage for those that are interested to seek out opportunities to get involved with it. Emilie, maybe that'd be a perfect segue to closure. Would you like to put a brief plug in to all those listening out there that may be piqued in their interest for the LDP?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the opportunity to apply is open. It just opened about a week ago, and it'll be open for one more month. The deadline's coming up at the end of May, I believe. And the last thing is a quote I heard J.P. Warner say, the thing about the leadership is that it teaches us to become the best versions of ourselves.
Certainly, JP is among our quotable leaders in the ASES, and I have to agree with him here. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for the podcast. I just want to thank so much our guests for their time and commitment of cause. For all the shoulder and elbow listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe. And for Peter Chalmers, I'm Brian Waterman. We'll see you next time.